In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we discuss the issues of what's taking place in the marginalized and underserved communities and how we can best serve and help them. Tonight, we have Mr. Ivan Thompson as our guest, and Mr. Thompson has got a lot of good things to talk about. That includes leadership as well as things that are happening in the community. Ivan is a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel who graduated from the United States Air Force Academy in 1986 with military distinction and as the outstanding cadet in organizational behavior. He earned his master's in management from Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia in 1995. He has over 25 years of experience consulting, conducting senior leadership off-sites, and strategic planning sessions. He served as deputy director of the Defense Business Practice Implementation Board. As the deputy, he helped facilitate task groups from the Secretary of Defense, comprised of senior DoD civilians and retired and active Fortune 500 CEOs. Ivan is a seasoned author with over 35 published titles. His books are available on Amazon.com, and many are available as audiobooks on audible.com. Ivan's three exceptional books about diversity in the Air Force books have garnered rave reviews, impacted Air Force policy, and directly led to the honorary promotion of original Tuskegee Airman Charles E. McGee to Brigadier General. Ivan is also a singer, songwriter, and a seasoned actor with a musical theater, television, improv, industrial, independent film, commercial, print, voiceover, and teleprompter credits. He has performed the national anthem for the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, WNBA, NASCAR, and NCAA. He was recently cast in the off-Broadway production Henry Box Brown the Musical. Other musical theater credits include Off-Broadway, Baby, The Color Purple, Non-Union National Tour, Regional, Next to Normal, Lewisburg, West Virginia, Kinky Boots, Long Island, New York, West Side Story, Los Angeles, Ragtime, Phoenix, The Wiz, Mesa, Arizona, Dreamgirls, Phoenix. Ivan has 5 adult children, 1 granddaughter, and resides in New York City. Ivan's original music can be found on iTunes, Spotify, Apple Music, and all other major music retailers. His Instagram is IvanLive360. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you all to Mr. Ivan Thompson.
Thank you, Charles, for having me and for that introduction. Thank you very much.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you for being here. Is there anything you'd like to add to your bio?
That felt like my whole life story. No, I don't think there's anything I'd like to add. I guess if you look at military as one career and then entertainment as a second career, I would say I'm about mid-career in my second career as an author, public speaker, singer, creative type, if you will.
Wow. Well, I mean, all of that is great, and also it's amazing that you retiring as a lieutenant colonel and you're still functioning, doing these multifaceted things. That speaks volumes.
Oh, thank you, God. To God be the glory.
Well, let's jump right into the show here, and tell us. Can you share a pivotal moment in your military career that shaped your leadership philosophy?
Hmm, good question. I think there's probably you can learn from positive role models and you can learn from negative role models. And I think as a young officer, I think I learned more from the bad examples. There were some folks. Everybody's not a cheerleader. Everyone's not going to celebrate your success. Everyone's not going to celebrate your talent. And what I found out was there were people who were. I'm not in direct competition with them for promotion, but jealousy. Um, at first I couldn't tell, and often as an African American, you can't tell if it's jealousy or if it's racism. All you know is that somebody is actively trying to thwart, hinder, come against you. And you don't, and so you, as a black man, you have to wonder: was it, is it because they're racist? Is it because and I sometimes you can't tell. But as a young officer, I found that it didn't. I needed to mix in my faith with my hard work because some people just the hard work produced results, but it also produced the jealousy and a coming and some forces coming against me that I couldn't deal with on my own. Meaning, some of my bosses tried to come after me and my ratings, downgrade my ratings, change my assignments, downgrade my awards, and my faith really helped me through that. So I think early on, I learned what kind of leader not to be so that when I got in that position, the people that work for me, I wouldn't be jealous of what they were trying to do. I would try to promote what they were trying to do. Because in the end, if you do good and you work for me, I'm going to look good. I couldn't
Right,
understand why other bosses didn't understand that. Because if I wanted to, I could kind of take credit for everything you do because you work for me.
right.
you know, Instead of trying to hold you down because you're gonna outshine me. So I think early on in my career, I learned that your job as a leader is to find out what people want. People go to work, for a paycheck, so on and so forth, but they also have ambitions and things that they want to accomplish. And if you can make that happen for people, people will do anything for you. So I think it shaped me as a young leader to try to figure out what's going on in their family life, what's going on in their career, where do they want to end up in their career, how can I help them with their rewards, how can I help them get to that next job, that next promotion, instead of what I experienced. Part of it, I was kind of a weird, I sang, and so as a junior officer, as a lieutenant, my singing put me in front of generals, in front of high ranking people, and so people got jealous of that, and the things I did on the outside, even though I was very good at my job as well. And so as a boss, I really tried to make sure that that wasn't me, that if I found a shining star, I tried to put that person out in front and enable them as best as I could. So I think for me, unfortunately, most of the lessons I learned were from some of the people what not to do when I was a boss.
It's amazing that as you speak of that, and with you being an officer in the military, you and I discussed this off camera, of course, but me being enlisted in the Navy, you know, I would say that the experiences and the things that you're speaking of, I think that, from my perspective, I think it's definitely more so was from a racist perspective because those other folk felt so entitled, and they were entitled because any situation or anything that was given that would give them the opportunity to be of prominence or to be promoted or whatever have you, they got those opportunities. So to see somebody like yourself now, I know it's got to be different as an officer, as an enlisted person, but it's interesting to know that you face some of those things, and it just I mean, you were still able to overcome them, but like in just that thinking of that thought process of that whole thing, what was your initial thoughts when those things were happening?
Wow. Um, I remember when I first started doing singing stuff, it wasn't even something that I mean, just God is good. Very high level folks were saying, "Hey, we want you." I had a black colonel that said, "You're gonna sing at every promotion, every retirement, every." He caught on, and so I remember the little captain in my office. He made a little comment, about me going off singing all the time, almost implying that I wasn't getting my work done. And I was a workaholic. I worked weekends, I worked lunches. There was no way I wasn't getting my work done. But he made the comment, and initially, I felt threatened by it. I got trapped in my own racial stereotypes, meaning I thought of myself. Uh, Younger people may not know what a minstrel is, you know, but
Right.
that I'm this singing black man, and the only reason I'm getting any praise is because I can sing, not because I'm a competent military officer. That used to weigh heavy on me, and then later I started getting the accolades for my work, and then I realized, no, this guy's just jealous, and it's not something I have to worry about. But initially I didn't know how to handle it because I'd never really seen that before. I didn't expect that. I expected that if we all work hard, we'll all respect each other and we'll all encourage each other, and that wasn't the case. Like I said, you can't tell if it's racism. In one case I knew it was, in a couple cases I knew it was. In one case I just thought he was just jealous, because all this shine was coming to me, and then eventually shine came to me because of my work. And
Mhm.
I was briefing the two-star on my work as well as singing at all the functions on base and stuff like that. But initially, I kind of the took it on myself like I was doing something wrong. That somehow I was internalizing these negative feelings instead of pushing them off, because I had this whole thing in my head. I don't want to be known for singing. I want to be known for being a good officer and doing my job. And eventually I realized, no, I'm actually good at both. I could do the singing on the side and I could still do
Mhm.
my job, and ended up doing a better job at my job at a lower rank that he was doing. So much so that later they came and asked to put a higher ranking person in my job and said, "Hey, we got to get this guy promoted. We want to take you out of your job and put you in his job so he can take over what you're doing because you built it up so much so he can get promoted." And so that
Mhm.
was that was crazy. But yeah, so I mean, as a young officer, you don't know. I was second lieutenant. I'm dealing with a captain. A six,
Mhm.
7 year captain. I'm a brand new second lieutenant. '01. I don't know what's going on. I don't know all the politics and stuff. I just know that you shouldn't be worried about what I'm doing over here as long as I'm getting my work done. Like I said, I was a workaholic. I worked weekends, I worked lunches. I was a single parent, but I had a lot of help with my daughter. So I was determined I was going to be company grade officer of the quarter. I had all these right out of the academy. I was just a hard charger thinking, I wanted to win all the awards and do all this other stuff. And that rubs some people the wrong way, that kind of like chill. And I just wasn't, I didn't come there to chill. I came there to do well and to excel. And everybody's not going to applaud that, especially when the results start coming in and you start getting shine. The colonel's asking for you, the general's asking for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, everybody's not going to like that. Black, white, whatever. Everybody's not going to like it.
So, so at this moment, especially in that situation, for the young officers or the newly enlisted personnel, what advice would you have for them when they experience situations like that?
Go find a mentor. Fortunately for me, I was told, go find a chief, go find a black colonel. And we had a mentoring organization in the Air Force that is now called Air Force Cadet Officer Mentor Association, whatever. But it was a bunch of black colonels, and so I could go to this black colonel and feel safe about asking him, "Hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Or here's my records. Am I headed on the right path?" And what I've seen, and I'm trying to write a book on that right now, and I've been gathering data. What I've seen is that our young people today, I'm 60, so th- they're not being told what I was told. Go find a black mentor. So today there's this thing out there, even perpetrated by other black people, that racism doesn't exist anymore, and that
Oh
you don't
Lord.
need a black mentor. Because there's a lot of things, whether it's corporate or it's military, there's a system. Whatever organization you're, there's a system, and it works, and there's things that you don't know as a new person about the system. So you got to go find you a mentor. It didn't necessarily have to be a Black mentor, but somebody that you can trust. I think Black mentors can help in the area of what I was talking about before. Is this jealousy? Is it racism? Is it, because that Black senior leader will have gone through some things and be able to maybe tell you, like I had a Black leader tell me for sure that one of the guys I was dealing with, oh yeah, I've dealt with him at a previous base. It is racism. You need to watch your back. And then even maybe be able to, the person at a higher rank can intervene in a different way than you can when you're going uphill addressing a senior person, and you've been in the military, you're not, when there's a rank difference, it's so hard to address somebody of a higher rank if you think something shady is going on. But if you have a mentor, they can sit down with you and say, here's how I approach it, or they can pick up the phone and make a phone call. So I would say to any young person, whether it's corporate or military, find that preferably African American, because and some people forget that they're African American, so you got to be careful about who you pick. Some people, I don't know how else to say it. But there are some people that feel like, we it's just a true meritocracy, and there, and that's not the case in every situation. So you maybe want to find somebody who. Not saying that the racism is around every corner, because it's not. Some of the most helpful supervisors I have, some of the best bosses I've ever had, even at that base where people were trying to do me in, the white guy gave me favor with the white 2-star, and he undid everything that people were trying to do to me. So it's not necessarily a race thing, but I think you need to be able to, if you think that's what you're experiencing, talk to someone about it, someone that you can feel safe about, someone who has a broader perspective of the organization that can look at your records, look at your performance objectively. I just had this happen with a cadet at the Air Force Academy who got into some trouble, and was being treated unfairly. And he wasn't even going to tell me about it. I talked to this boy all the time and asked him, how's it going? How's it going? And he just assumed there was nothing he could do about it. He had got in some trouble. He's just going to accept this bad punishment. And then once he finally spilled it, I was able to make some phone calls and engage at a much higher level. And fortunately, it was all squashed. But he wasn't even going to tell me about it. I just had the same thing happen about a year and a half ago with some pilots. I met with them before they went to pilot training and said, hey, I know a whole bunch of pilots. If you get in trouble, let somebody know. And they didn't tell me until they got deep in trouble. One of them had already washed out. The other one, he didn't even tell his dad. His dad was in the Air Force. We tried to rally all these high-level colonels and lieutenant colonels and pilots to try to help him, but it was too late. So this piece of our culture is fading away. This notion that I need to go find this Black mentor, especially like in the Air Force where most of the leadership is white. There's a comfort level there that needs to be, because I know I would approach young Black officers and they look at me like I have 3 horns in my head. Like, I don't need a Black mentor. And I'm going, if I could just get them to let me see your records. And they let me see their records. I go, ooh, you think you're doing good. You think what it says in this piece of paper in your records is good, but it's not. And let me tell you why. And I'm not saying that in every case it was because they were Black that their records, but what I told my white leadership was that on the whole, for the organization I mentored in LA, for example, on the base, I said our Black officers have a lower understanding of the system and what needs to be in their records to make them competitive for promotion. Why is that? I can't blame it all on white people, but I'm just saying this is what it is. So there's a need here and I'm going to fill it for the ones that'll let me fill it. Because some people, like I said, they didn't feel like they needed a Black mentor. I just trust my boss. And in every case, you can't do that, and then sometimes you do need that for that, whatever percentage it is, for that undercover racist, biased, whatever you want to call it, boss that you think is doing you well and is really not. That's when you need that mentor to be able to say, no, you're not getting the straight scoop here. And I don't know how we do that, when we have so many people now that are thinking, racism is dead. I won't name any politicians who've said that, get in trouble, but it's just not true. It's just not true. Like I said, it's not everybody, but there's enough bias in the system, or what we call unconscious bias, where people are looking at you and they don't even know themselves that they're biased. You couldn't tell them that they were biased. But if you looked at their actions or maybe how they rated a group of people, there's just enough unconscious bias for them to rate you lower than they should have based on your accomplishments. And the only one that can really help you with that is somebody who has a more experience and longevity in the system to say, hey, man, based on what you're telling me, you should really be ranked here, not here. If we're doing a rack and stack 1 through 10, you should really be like number 3 instead of number 7. And in the military, if we rack and stack for promotions, for jobs, because if I give you this job and him this job, certain jobs are going to put you on a faster track for promotion, and
Exactly.
promotion equals money. And we only got 20, 25 years to do this thing. So if you keep getting faster and faster promotions or better jobs, larger people, the numbers you're supervising, stuff like that, you're going to get promoted at a higher rate. You're going to finish higher, E7, E9, whatever, O6. And then that sticks with you for the rest of your life. My retirement paycheck is based on where I finished. And to
Hmm.
try to get people to understand that, I told this black 4-star, I said, you know what? I said, I was the most unmentorable person. And part of it dealt with my upbringing. My father wasn't that role model. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, in my family, it was painted that, the black man wasn't a good person to look to because of, different things. So I had a
Yeah.
distrust and I looked down. I didn't realize it till later in life. I didn't realize I looked at my black leaders as less than.
Oh, wow.
I didn't realize it until after I retired. I went to that 4-star and retired. I apologized to him. I said, I could have listened to you more, but I took on some of this cultural stereotype that somehow the white officer, the white pastor, the whatever was better than. And I didn't
Hmm.
realize it until I was well down the road, 40s, out the door. I'm going, why do I look at them? And then, wow, this goes all the way back to childhood issues and my perception of black men. And then I'm thinking that's sometimes what I was receiving when I went to go be a mentor. They're looking at me like, well, you're not a full colonel, you're not a general, you don't have anything to offer me. I can trust my white officer, supervisor more than I can trust you. And I didn't
Hmm.
realize that I was doing some of the same things. I had some of the same perceptions, and that's pretty deep, but we do have these things we have to unpack. Like why would I see a black officer and a white officer differently at the same rank? This officer was a 4-star, black 4-star. I had known him in 3 different bases, watched him
Hmm.
go from major '04 to 4-star, vice chief of staff of the Air Force, before I realized, wow, I've been looking at him differently, and I could have benefited from his advice a long time ago. But then that made me a better mentor. So if somebody was rejecting me, I didn't take it personally.
Hmm.
I just try to stick with it and get it to them another way, or get them somebody else to talk to them. Like in LA, if they wouldn't listen to me, we had a black 1-star. I put him on the calendar. I remember the
Hmm.
1-star black officer told me, Ivan, you could have told him this. I said, sir, I know, but he wouldn't listen to me.
Hmm.
I didn't have the credibility on my shoulder for this person to look at me, but he would listen to you even though we would have told him the same thing. So I try to understand, okay, you might not be able to receive it from me, but I care about you so much. I want to make sure you get this information, because at the end of the day, I know I'm right. I
Hmm.
know that you're not going to get promoted with the way you're going on what they're telling you in your office, even though that you're supposed to be able to trust them. They're not telling you the right thing. And I've written books about it. I've helped people. Some people say thanks, some people they don't. That's not why I'm doing it.
Hmm.
I just want people to succeed, and because like I said, there's a lot of things I wish I had known, and I was helped by some people along the way. um Black colonels that told me things. And then like I said, it wasn't just black, but when I thought it was something like that, I needed to be able to talk to another black person who would understand that. you
Hmm.
know and I don't know how you can get around that sometimes, if that's what you think you're dealing with.
You know, I won't say the details, but um, actually, I was stationed in uh, a place on the Sun Belt, and when I say Sun Belt, that is, that's the coast, the Gulf Coast area. That's like Louisiana, Mississippi,
Mississippi.
Alabama, Florida, and so forth. Well, I was stationed there. Of course, my job was a dispersing clerk. So I did payroll. So pretty much finances connected to personnel, so pretty much it goes hand in hand, especially when there's some disciplinary actions and things of that nature where people are going to lose money or they're going to lose rank and things of that nature. Well, there's a bunch of young guys, and we didn't have Just so you say, because what you said is key. We didn't have anybody that looked like us that was at that tier. So that was what it was. And so remember, I said we were on the Sun Belt. We're in the Sun Belt. So we were on deployment. And while we were on deployment, I noticed, some things that was happening in a particular company, right? And so all these young boys, they looked to me for leadership, right? And so all of the issues that they were bringing to me, because I was seeing it, and I actually asked um, my dispersing officer, and I kept asking him. I said, "Does this look strange to you?" They were, and now during the time I'm talking, because I've been out the military now for over 30 years.
Okay.
So just think about it. We're talking about young boys that are E1s, E2s, maybe E3s. And they're getting all these disciplinary actions. They're busting them in rank, you know. And I mean, it was like just happening continuously and continuously and continuously. So I'm like, something is just not right about that. And I'm asking, my dispo, and he's just like giving me this diplomatic answer. And so with this diplomatic answer, I'm like, that's just ain't good enough. Because you see what I see right here, and we know that something's wrong with this, right? Well, there was particular E8 that was over this company that had this problem. Okay. And it was like target practice. That's how serious this was. So I said, I'm gonna do some things where I'm gonna make this change. Okay. So I created, some surveys and so forth, and had all these people within the whole entire command. That is everybody that looked like me to meet me at my room. And so while we were talking, I gave them the survey and I told them, I said, make sure this goes to nowhere but back to me. I need you to fill it out and bring it back to me. It was surprising, but it wasn't surprising. So I requested to see the CO. So as I requested to see the CO, going up through the chain, they're asking me why I need to see the CO. I
Well, you
said,
need to see him, right?
that's personal. That's not for you. I got to the CO and he knew exactly what was happening, because we had a talk. And again, I want to talk about that discussion, but we had a discussion. That discussion turned into a negotiation. Can you believe this? It turned into a negotiation. So,
What was he offering?
well, he told me, he says, I can't give you the command, but I can make some changes. What is it that you want? I told him that I wanted that particular individual
Moved
out the
out.
command.
Yeah.
He needed to be out the command. And so he says, I'll get back to you. So what he did was he moved him from over this company to operations. So I had to go see him again. I'm like, you just made him more powerful. Because if you may put him in operations, he still controls each and every move of these young men, where he could still do the same thing. Because if he's not happy and he don't like it, just anything, if your uniform was wrong or whatever have you, he could say whatever you want to say about that. I said,
Yeah.
he's got to go. I said, if he's not gone, then I'm gonna send these. I'm gonna send these to CNN, and I want to know how you think about that.
Mm.
He was gone.
Well, good, good. I mean, that is pretty powerful because I mean, we have, I don't know if in the Navy they had like the EO office, or anything like that, back then. Um, I don't know how else you could have addressed it.
There was
We
no other way.
just we after George Floyd, a lot of companies did, the whole, you know, and looking within, and and looking for disparities and stuff. And the Air Force did too. And what they found was the same kind of disparities you're talking about with enlisted African Americans having harsher punishments, lower promotions, all these things. And what I write about is that whatever's in society outside the gate is going to be inside the gate. And the same
Yep.
problems we have outside the gate, we need to realize those problems are inside the gate. And we in the book, one of my books I write, it's called uh, I forget the name of the book, the Air Force's Black Pilot State of the Union. The first book I wrote was called The Air Force's Black Ceiling. The third book in the series is called The Air Force's Black Pilot State of the Union. But one of the things I address is this notion of this report. I addressed that report that came out of the Air Force. It showed that the same kind of things we've been seeing: officers getting promoted at a lower rate, higher rates of discipline, higher rates of adverse action against minorities. And this whole concept of unconscious bias, even though some of these people who are administering these punishments might not think that they're biased, or they might not be consciously going, I'm out to get people of a certain race or gender. When you look at the aggregate of it, you go, this is happening Air Force wide, and we need to do something about it, and we need to address it. Whether it's sensitivity training, which everybody hates that kind of word, or whatever, we need to acknowledge that it's happening. And in my book, I wrote, Black people don't need to know. Black people don't need a study to tell them that it's happening, because they're experiencing it. They already know it's happening. The people in white leadership need to know it's happening, and try to figure out how we're going to get our arms around this. George Floyd heightened it, and then, as we all knew, eventually the noise and the commotion and the uproar over George Floyd's death was going to, die down. And we get to where we are now, where, we're talking about we need to get rid of all, DE and I, and I won't even get into the election and all the other stuff, and that's going to happen, but yeah, it's still there because it's still in society, and someone like you doing what you did, that was amazing. I had somebody come to me, one of my senior NCOs, E7, came to me and said, hey, the Black enlisted people are being mistreated in our unit. And they're, and so I looked into it. Now, only problem he made was then he tried to tell me how to fix it, and that wasn't his place. We kind of bumped heads a little bit. So let me look into it, because I'm, as a Black officer, as a Black leader, or yourself, whatever level of leadership you are, you're the leader for all of those people,
Right.
Black, white, Asian, brown, and you got to make sure everybody's treated fairly. But I have an additional responsibility, and everybody doesn't think this way, to look at those people that look like me. Somebody reported, hey, something's going on that we think is shady, like your commander. I looked into it, and I did find some stuff, and I went, oh, I do see something here. And so we're trying to be fair to everybody. In those instances where I saw something was going on and it looked like it was something racial, then I intervened directly. And like you said, I moved some people. Like one guy just he didn't want to change his position on this guy's rating. And I was like, well, I can override your rating, but I can also make sure that you're not a supervisor of my unit anymore. And so I reorganized the flight, and you'll never be a supervisor for me again if you don't know how to, and another guy had this stupid thing, in the Air Force, we have airmen below the zone. So that's like a 1 or 2 striper who super excels, but you got to rate them like firewall. You're the best thing since sliced bread, so you can get early promotion. And he had a supervisor who's like, no airman is perfect, perfect 5s. I'm going, I know that. If you wanted to go by the book, nobody is, but you're rating people on their potential, because there are people that get promoted below the zone. There's people that get step promotions, and they all have firewalls. So it's being done, and we just got to figure out if this person's worth the benefit of the doubt. They have the potential for that. And this guy didn't see that he should do that. So I overrode his ratings. I said, okay, I'm not negotiating with you. I'm boss. And then like I said, but I'm also not, like, it works both ways, meaning I'm looking out for everybody. Who are the sharpest people? And then is there anything going on that's specifically harmful to this group of people? And then I've had it work the opposite way, where this one brother, he felt like I should cut him a break because he was Black, meaning like he left work early. He would kind of like clock out. He was going to baseball games, on duty, uh, he would. I would put notes on my door. I had 80 people working for me. I would put a note if I'm somewhere in the unit. I'll put a note where I'm at when I'm coming back. He would just disappear, and I was like, when you leave, you need to let me know where you're going. And so the first sergeant comes to me. He goes, "Sir, I don't know how to tell you this. I'm gonna say the guy's name, but Sergeant X says you're not black." I knew
Mhm.
exactly what he meant because he expected me to let it slide, and I did. I tried it. He was my administrative person, so he did all of my enlisted ratings, all of my paperwork. And so one of these Fridays, I was stationed in Tucson, and they have spring training there. He was a baseball nut. He would go off
Mhm.
to baseball games,
Yes,
early and
yes.
just
That's the
sneak out.
grapefruit league.
So I took all his ratings. I went, it's just administrative stuff. I can finish all this stuff. I turned it all into the commander secretary, and that Monday they all came back. Because I don't know his job, what to look for. And my boss turns to me at the table. He goes, rah, 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 choose on me. Don't ever sit this kind of crap up again. And because I'm trying to cover for him. And I went, okay, I'm not doing that no more. He needs to do his job. Because I asked him when he took the job, he was in a work center of like 12. I said, Sergeant X, we got 80 people in this work center. I know you want to come over here so you can have the higher work center on your report so it can make you
Mhm.
more competitive for promotion. But are you ready for that? Oh yeah, I'm ready for it. But then, like I said, disappearing, and then he was probably like about 40 pounds overweight, but he was the weight monitor.
Oh shit.
And we had those big green uniforms, and he wasn't getting caught because he was the weight monitor. All the stuff was kind of, I was put in this position where I was supposed to let it slide because we both black. And
Mm.
so, and I didn't. So he told the first sergeant I wasn't black. And he was worried that I was going to rate him poorly. And you damn right I'm going to rate you poorly because you're doing your job. And when I
Right.
confronted him on it, I said, "Hey man, you've been dipping out, blah, blah, blah." I'm talking to him. I'm standing. You already know I'm going with this. I'm standing, talking
Mhm.
to you, and you're sitting. He just kind of like barely looked up. He didn't stand, and I'm going, oh. So I didn't say anything in the moment, but later in a counseling session or another session, I calmed myself down. I said, "Hey, the other day I was talking to you about this. You didn't stand." He goes, "I was afraid of what I might say."
Mhm. Oh
You're really
wow.
pushing the limits of, this. I'm supposed to, make special concessions to you just because you're black, and I've,
Mhm.
I've already kind of given you about as much as I can do because now my boss is yelling at me. So I
Mhm.
don't care if you're black. I don't care if you got the same last name as me. Like I had a
Mhm.
cousin in my unit got busted for underage drinking. I had to like, how am I going to deal with this? Because the commander don't even know he's my cousin. I was like, So I just called every underage person in. I kind of fussed them all out and said, no underage drinking. But really, I'm only talking to one person,
Right.
to my cousin, because it's a difficult thing, whereas the sad thing about the Air Force is it's not the same for white officers. Meaning, if a white officer helps another white officer, it's not looked at any kind of way. But if I, as a black officer, help another black enlisted or black officer, something's supposed to be wrong with that. And there's some black officers that get caught in that trap. They don't want to seem like they're doing something special for other black people because of
That's
the
the
impression,
entitlement. That's the entitlement.
whereas the good old boy system or the I knew your father, that's alive and well in the Air Force, and has always been. In my book, in that same book, I write that most of our black generals, their parents were in the military.
Mhm.
Like the first uh, the commander of the Tuskegee Airmen, his father was the first black Army general, and then so
Mhm.
General Davis becomes the first black Air Force general.
Mhm.
So there is some when people get in, they coattails.
Mhm.
But somehow when the coattails are African American, we want to look at that a little bit different. When we're helping each other up, that's looked at as a bad thing. You
Mhm.
know, whereas white officers do it all the time. In my book, one of my earlier books, in this book actually, I wrote about how Douglas MacArthur, five-star general, his father was a general. His mother wrote the president, said, "Hey, let him keep his wartime rank,"
Oh
and
wow.
the president let him keep his rank. So that fast tracked him to be able to be in World War II, five-star, Douglas MacArthur. So, Eisenhower got in trouble as a major, as a 04, he called up his buddy Pershing. He knew a General Pershing. General Pershing makes phone calls. Ike gets bailed out. Ike becomes a 5-star president. You know, that kind of stuff has gone on throughout our military history. But when Black people do it, it's frowned on. You know, and so, unfortunately, some of our Black officers don't have the courage. I don't say the courage. It's a tough place to be in, you know, because usually they're the only one. We've only had 11 Black 4-stars in the Air Force out of over 250 4-stars. Just for
Mhm.
perspective, you talk about, you know, like this book. I remember Air Force's Black Ceiling had a white lady come up to me at a place where I was selling them, and she was like, "Oh, so your book is kind of obsolete now." I was like, "What?" Because we had a Black Air Force chief of staff, kind of like, "Oh, problem solved. Racism is over." You know, I'm like, she don't get it. She don't get it. You know?
No, believe me, them people will never get that. They will
Hopefully, if
never
you read
get
the
it.
books, you'll understand. But it was funny. She's like, your book's kind of obsolete by now, right? I'm like, what?
Oh, wow. That's crazy. So, how do you believe your military experience has influenced your approach to leadership in civilian life?
Good question. So one of the things I experienced on the tour, I was on a tour as an understudy and a swing. A swing is like a substitute teacher, meaning an understudy. I was the understudy for Mister in The Color Purple. So if the guy from Mister can't go on, I go on in his place. So a swing is along the same concept, meaning I had to learn 5 different people's parts. So if any one of them went out, I could jump in like a
Okay.
substitute.
Mhm.
But you know, you got like the primary cast, then you got the swings. And so on the tour I was on, they kind of treated us like crap, you know. And so I kind of stepped in. I was like, look, I don't know how they treat people in this industry, but I learned how to take care of people where I came from. And this is not it. If you say we're
Okay.
all part of the same team,
Mhm.
then we should all be treated with dignity and respect. So, and what I found, and I've worked in other places, I almost named some nonprofits and stuff. What I found, oh yeah, nonprofits and academia, what I found out is somebody might be, let's say in the church setting, they might be a
Mhm.
great orator, they might know the Bible, but they have no training on how to treat people.
Exactly.
And so they don't know how to develop people. They don't know necessarily how to discipline people, praise them. You know, we're taught praise in public, discipline in private. Nonprofits I work for, some people, I remember this guy in this one nonprofit organization in Arizona. Leadership at the highest level made a mistake. They
Mhm.
made a mistake that was going to cost the company money and affect ours at the lowest level. So this guy comes in and he's going to be briefing them. He wasn't in my organization. He was in another organization. He was in the retail side of this nonprofit. I was in another side of it. But I'm there that day and I'm in the meeting. He's talking to all the retail people, telling them that they're going to have to take a cut in their hours.
Mhm.
And somebody raises their hand and kind of like, well, you know, why? And the guy told him, be lucky you have a job. I went, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, ooh." And these people only making like $10 an hour. And some of these people
Exactly.
in his organization were they were like the most profitable or successful part of this nonprofit organization. I'm going, you're talking to some of the people who've been the most loyal to this nonprofit, and you said, "Be lucky you had." I wish I was like the VP, like I was like to put on, you know, like they said, the CEO in hiding or the undercover CEO. I said, I wish I was the
Mhm.
CEO, undercover CEO, because I would have handed that dude his papers right there on the spot. You need to
Yeah,
be lucky you have a job and you don't have a job anymore. Goodbye. You telling the most
exactly.
loyal group of people, but, you know, because what it was, this nonprofit hired people, like they made a big deal of we hired these people off the street. But then in the back of their mind, they remembered that. Don't forget, we hired you off the street. You know, I had that happen to me
Ooh.
once. I was the deputy director of Defense Business Board, and I remember being told that when I challenged something. Well, we hired you, like, you know, and you were only a major. And I was like, what?
Wow.
What? Is that what you really think of me? And so, in terms of how people should be treated, mentoring, I realized my military training, because, you know, at every level as an officer, you get professional military education. As a captain, you get squadron officer school. As a major, you get air command and staff college. As a colonel, lieutenant colonel, you get air war college, and you get all these trainings on leadership and supervisory stuff and scenarios. And then you have all the real life experience of being a leader, supervising people, disciplining people, rewarding people, promoting people. And what I've seen in the nonprofit and even in entertainment sectors, a lot of people don't have that kind of expertise. And a lot of these managers, they just talk to people in the old kind of way, and they have no training, for how to motivate or how to develop, or even being told, okay, like this is a resource. We've invested money in training and hiring this person. We want to nurture them and develop them um, with something beyond just their paycheck.
Right.
Some people you can retain if you're just nice to them. Imagine that. Or you care about them, and they know they have a little kid who has a softball game next week that's very important to them, and let's try to figure it out so you can be off on that day. Caring about people, that there's no place in academia. Like a person in an academic situation, they might be a great teacher and they get promoted to principal or some, managerial thing, but all they know is classroom instruction. They don't know how to supervise people. I remember I was working in a school where they just decided we're not going to give, what was it? They didn't allow you to take a holiday in conjunction with a 3-day weekend, even though it was in their handbook that you could. And because the leadership was too lazy to figure out a schedule that would allow people to take it off, either by seniority, you've been here the longest, you get to take it off. They just said, nobody can. I'll come along. 15 years of HR experience, I put in for that day. I'm a PE teacher at that time doing 12 classes a day. I'm getting wore out, and I put in for it, and they said, you can't take it. I went to the handbook because I'm an HR guy, It said in the
Right.
handbook says that I can. Well, we strongly discourage that. And I went, why? And then I pressed on with it and did it anyway. They got upset, but they were too lazy to figure out. Even when there was another thing where teachers had a planning period, and they said it's too much work to try to connect the teacher's planning period to their lunch or whatever so they can get an entire hour off. It was all disconnected. So I sat down because I've done shift schedules in the military. I've done shifts, seen shift schedules. So let me take a stab at it. And I put together a shift schedule that married everybody's planning period near their lunch or whatever. Oh, the teacher's all excited. Well, then the principal gets upset because she was too lazy to put in that kind of time. We approved
She didn't
it. She
want to
got
work.
pissed off. She
She
got
didn't want
pissed
to
off
work.
that she got pissed off that I would take that kind of effort, because she had said it couldn't be done. And I'm going, they probably just don't know. But I mean, the whole idea of the manager as a servant, the leader as a servant, I already, know that I make more money than you. We look at the pay scales, as an officer first and list of people, yeah, you're making all the big bucks, Well, then
Mhm.
there's a responsibility with that, that I should be trying to, know something about you and your family. I should know if there's stuff going on that I can help you with. If you're going to school, if you need leave at a certain time, that kind of thing. I brought that into these, other organizations that I worked in after I retired, or even in the entertainment industry. And I expect those things. I expect to be treated the same way. I will raise my hand and say something, like, hey, I don't know how it's being done here, but you can be nice. You can treat us all the same, and even HR principals. You're like, okay, I hear you, Mr. Entertainment person right over me, but everybody has a boss. I know that because I was in the military. Everybody has a boss. So you're saying this, I write a letter to your boss or to your boss's boss, and then yeah, I'm gonna get my issue resolved. And so I learned all that in the military, and I think it serves me well. Even in, like I said, I see it in ministry. I've seen academic where they might have this one little skill, but nobody ever taught them about leadership, being a servant leader. They might say they care about people, but they don't know how to deal with certain situations because they haven't had the same training.
Mhm. Wow.
Not saying that
So
every military leader is a good, an embodiment of all that, because we know that they're not.
yeah, well, we know that not everybody's a good leader. And some people are pretty much, as you mentioned earlier, they're kind of like stuck in that situation. The entitled people, that's how they benefit. And they benefit because they have this great crew that makes them look totally, totally perfect. And they don't know the first thing about the whole entire operation. They just don't know shit. But because they have that name and they look like somebody that like them, and they look like somebody to say, well, I need you to do this, and you're just going to be put here. They're put there and they just benefit from that good labor. That's where I think in the military, especially, that, if we talk about merit, merit is not there. It's there on the book as in say what it's supposed to look like. But the majority of those people that are in those leadership positions are there because somebody put them there because they know somebody.
Well,
And they
I,
get
I
to
think
stand there all that time and screw up stuff and mess people around and everything else. And they just benefit from that.
I won't go that far with you, Charles. I will say that if you're, let's just say you're white, you're Caucasian, and you are super talented, and you are a good leader, it's going to be easier for you to rise up the ranks than somebody that's equally talented and qualified as you. I'm not saying I won't go so far as to say that everybody who's white who's got to a higher position was unqualified or less qualified. I know that's not the case. But I would say like this black general who was now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He said I always had to work the old adage, twice as hard to go half as far kind of thing. He always had to work harder, to overcome perceptions. Even our current uh, SecDef, Secretary of Defense, former black four-star, talked about how he would have white officers do his briefings, people that were his subordinates do his briefings so that it could get across, or how sometimes they come up and they're greeting him and he's with his like aide or whatever, and they go up and greet the aide like the aide is the boss because they assumed the white person was the leader. And the kind of things that we go through as leaders are different. But I won't say that, that we're always either more qualified or that they're always either less qualified. I would just say that if we're equally qualified, a lot of times it's going to be harder for that African American because of the unconscious and conscious bias. Somebody sees you, they're already making judgments, have perceptions about you. Some of the perceptions they have, they're not even aware of. And so, as a mentor, like for me, when I came in, I had that feeling, and I was like, well, as long as they looking at, they might as well see something good. I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be shining every time you see my uniform's gonna be together. I'm gonna be the most qualified, whatever. And then I found out my faith plays a big part in that too. In that, um, I found out. You talk about those pivotal moments. I found out my working hard was not enough. But when I added my faith to it, then God helped me. We call favor. Daniel, Joseph, Esther in the Bible, they found favor. God caused the highest man on the base to have, to like me and see my work when other little minions in between was trying to, you know, put a brother down. God caused the two-star to have favor with me. Everything I did, he loved it. And so that trumped everything. When people tried to cancel my assignments, when they tried to tell me I didn't deserve certain decorations, I wasn't going, to have this or that, or they took over all the shiny stuff I was working on, trying to put Cinderella in the corner and work on other stuff. Whatever I was working on, God caused that man to be concerned about that. And that's my testimony, and did I have some things that made it to my record that were harmful? Yes. Did they hurt my career? I would say no. In terms of all the things that I wanted to accomplish in my career, I pretty much accomplished. There's things I probably could have done to go further, but I didn't decide to. I always had one eye out, because I always wanted to do some of the things I'm doing now. So some of the decisions I made affected the rank I attained. Like I went on a 1-year musical tour, which for promotion to colonel doesn't fit at all. But for what I'm doing now, it set the stage for a lot of things I'm doing now. And I just didn't know at that time that I would be doing this full time. I never saw that, or I didn't think it was viable anymore because I tried it when I was young. I was on Bobby Jones Gospel. I did all the shows, auditioned for all those things or whatever. Hopefully I answered your question. I have a tendency to ramble. So wave at me if I'm rambling and not answering your questions.
Oh no, you're fine. What are some key leadership lessons you learned while serving in the military?
I think we've covered a lot of them. That the people that I'm responsible for, I'm supposed to serve them. Servant leadership. Jesus washed people's feet. So for me, I would get in and look at everybody's records when I first got in, And then I'll bring everybody in eventually, like what are your goals? Because we're all in the military, we're all in an assignment, but we're going to another assignment. We're at one rank and we want to be another rank. And so I try to figure out for each person, what is it that you want out of your career, your next job? And then try to figure out how can I help you to do that. Some people, they didn't have a next job thing. They just want to go to school. Okay, how can I put you in a job where you can go to school? Some people, so being a servant, excellence, hey, to try to teach what excellence means. Some people thought excellence and being promoted was a timestamp. I've been an E6 for 12, for 5 years. So it's my time to be E7. I'm like, no, because you're getting a check, and so everybody, you come to work, you get a check. If you want to be the highest ratings, you got to do more than just your job. You got to be visible in the unit. You got to do the extra things because there are people doing extra things. And when I'm rating everybody, you're being rated against your peers. So teaching people what excellence meant, like in my unit, I told my E6s, that E7 is somebody that leaps tall buildings in a single bound. They do. I tell them one time and they get it done. I don't have to come back and explain. And I tried to tell them what excellence meant and set the example myself, be a role model for that. But then when I saw excellence rewarded, but teach them how to goal set, teach them how to do the hard things. Like some people might be excellent, like an excellent technician. Let's say radio repair. I had an E7. He was good at testing. He was good at his skill, but he wasn't good at discipline. I'm like, man, as an E7, you're the superintendent. I need you to be able to handle some disciplinary stuff. Not that I can't handle it, but if you're the senior enlisted person in this unit, you need to be able to do both. You need to be able to praise, but you also need to be whack people on the head when they need it. And so teaching people how to discipline, how to document, how to care. I don't know how you teach caring. Some people just, they don't get it. And those people, my job, I wasn't very confrontational. I felt God kept putting me in situations where I had to confront. I had a guy that was blowing. He was a Navy guy. They do things different in the Navy. He was a civilian, but he was a Navy guy. He was blowing in this girl's ear. And my first thought was something sexual. But he was blowing in her. He blew in her ear like, do you have a brain? And so I had to take him in and write him a letter of reprimand. Say, you do it again, you're fired. So I'm responsible for the whole culture. So what I trick myself into doing, because I'm not very confrontational, when I'm doing this quote unquote bad thing by disciplining this person that blew in the ear, I'm making the work center better for everyone. Or like this one guy, he wanted to be a leader so bad. And I told him, hey, man, I don't really know if you're qualified to be a leader. Oh, I got it. So I got one thing I want you to do. We keep having this problem in this one area with classified documents. It's a training issue. Make sure people are doing the training and stuff like that. So one day I learned management by walking around, managed by surprise popping in. I popped in. Let me see the training records. Because he told me he'd been on it. They were all blank. You wait right here. You wait right here. I went back and asked the E7. I said, hey, man, I'm going to need you to do 2 jobs for a while because I'm about to fire him. You have to do your job and his job, but I'll make it up to you in your rating. And I did. And I went back, fired that guy. And I looked at that as when I'm doing something hard, I'm serving our whole unit by getting somebody who's underperforming out of the way. That's the way I tricked myself, because in firing somebody, you think, oh, man, if I fire him or if I mark him down on his record, he may never get promoted. But if I'm serving the whole unit, if I'm moving the underperforming, especially if you lied, I mean, there's no excuse for that. You lied, and you've been lying. I asked you about it a couple times. You lying, and there's no room for that. So as a leader serving the organization, I'm promoting the good people, but I'm also pulling the supervisors, because nobody likes a bad boss or a boss that's underperforming, especially if you're one of the hard chargers and you're under a boss that's average, or like, this is what we need to do. You got a hard charger and junior NCO under a guy that's trying to retire or just kind of take it easy. Okay, how do I move these people up so these young lions can run? Or that's a bad egg, so people that need to be fired. I fired this other guy just because he was the guy that came to me and told me, hey, there's some stuff going on with the brothers. I was like, okay, I'm looking into it, but then it wasn't enough for him. So then he filed the EEO complaint, he filed the IG complaint. It was all this other stuff. I was like, bro, I got it. Finally had to say, I call it getting shot in the head, shoot you in the face. You're fired. Because he was really, it was really something self-serving. He was trying to be in a position where he would be in charge of this certain thing. And I said, hey, we already have a civilian that we're going to fill to do that. But he went around and did all this other stuff. So trying to make the organization healthy, you have to do the good and the bad as a leader to make it so that so the whole unit can function effectively, and everyone that gets rewarded, it's no favoritism. And the people that are slowing us down, they either get moved to the side, or if they're doing bad stuff, they get fired. With appropriate warning. They don't teach that. In civilian sector or whatever. Like, I talked to you, then I talked to you again. I wrote it down. Then I wrote it down again. We start stacking up the paper, and then when that doesn't work, and I got the documentation to show the union or whoever else. Like, I learned all that in the military too.
Mhm.
So but that's also fairness. You don't, one person makes, I had a boss that, you make one mistake, he just tried to cut your head off. And I jumped in front of a couple of those bullets a couple of times because he wrecked a couple people's careers. I actually held something back from him, got my first letter of counseling, because I knew if the boss finds out about this, he's going to wreck this guy's career. So I hid it from him. And when he found out about it, he did the same thing to me, come back to my office in like 30 minutes, which was right for him to do. But he was so out of balance. I figured, hey, I got to take this one on the chin for my folks to try to keep them from this boss that really doesn't care about them, and really wasn't, he wasn't open to any, it was just one mistake, you know, kind of thing. So, oh,
So,
and then be the role model. That was the last part of it. Whatever, like the guy was telling me who was disappearing. I put a note on my door because most of the time, as the boss, it's a mother may I think. People are trying to do their job. They just trying to get me to sign off on something. Can I do it? So if I'm not around, I'm slowing them down. So coming to work on time. If I expect them to be on time, I can't be late just because I'm the boss. I'm the boss. I could come in late. No, I got to be the role model in my appearance, in how I do my job, how I relate to others. And so if I do that, then hopefully it rubs off on them. And then also, I can hold you accountable now because I'm not asking you to do anything that I'm not doing.
mhm.
Coming to work on time, doing my job, treating people with respect, so on and so forth. Be the role model. That's something that, as a leader, you have to do.
So, can you discuss a challenging leadership situation you faced during your military service and how you overcame it?
I've talked about a lot of them. Um, let's see. I'm thinking of this one where I was at the Pentagon and we were in an office that didn't get much attention. We were, I don't know if they have cross trainees in the Navy, meaning like you were in
We
one
do.
specialty and
Yeah.
something happened and they moved you in. And so usually when you get grafted in, you don't get treated the same. 'Cause,
Well, pretty much the way that works with us is like normally those that were like, let's say in supply and admin was pretty much like almost like that. So pretty much you can actually do the cross training, and especially when you're getting your ESWAS pin, you have to do that anyway. But you do the cross training, especially if it's needed in your short staff.
So, but if you come in as that cross trainee and you weren't originally that, sometimes the people that were that originally get favoritism and,
Yes.
okay. So I was in a situation like that and we're in this office and we're all officers. I'm a branch chief. So the people working for me are senior captains and captains and some civilians, GS-12s, 13s, whatever. And they're not doing anything, meaning it might have been some junior majors in there too, because I was a senior major. Um, And so they're in there like playing on the computer and just goofing. I mean, just they're just not doing very much. So I went to the colonel and said, "Hey, it's not good that these guys don't have any work to do because when it comes time to do that 1 year evaluation, what are they going to put on there? Because they ain't been doing very much." And so the colonel didn't really hear me. So one of the times I was in the meeting with the general, I told the general, "We don't have enough work to do."
Oh
Uh,
wow.
The colonel didn't appreciate that, but then the general backed up the K loader, and dumped all this work on us. And all of a sudden, everybody that was playing around the computer and stuff, now they had stuff to do. And then we had one shiny penny in the office. And I said, boss, as much as we like this guy, we need to set him free. We need to give him away to another office where he'll get some shine and be more competitive for squadron commander. And I convinced the colonel to let him go. And he did become a squadron commander, a personnel squadron commander, and moved his career on. So, in terms of, I mean, of course they didn't like me at first when all of a sudden all the work starts pouring in. But like I said, one of them became a squadron commander, and these guys, got something to put into their records. It put me at odds with the colonel. I lived, he didn't like the fact that I went to the general and told him we have no work to do. you know,
Mhm.
the colonel didn't appreciate it. But in terms of taking care of my people, I know that what's happening here is not good for you. If you don't have any meaty things to put in your evaluation, you won't get promoted. And so that was one. Um, there's other times. I'm trying to see is that enough, or do you want another one?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. So, how do you adapt military leadership principles to the business world?
Mm. Some things transfer very well, like having a goal, having a vision. Like let's say in the military you have inspections. And a lot of times in the big inspections, I don't know, on the ship or on a base, I'm gonna use the Air Force base. The IG inspection is a big deal. You fail the
Mhm.
IG inspection, wing commander gets fired. I don't know in the Navy, nuclear, what kind of ship you're on, whatever. There's certain inspections you can't fail.
Exactly.
And so that might be the vision, that might be the goal, and then communicating that. So in the business sense, the goal might be some kind of revenue target. It might be some kind of other growth target. And so the idea of coming up with a vision, coming up with goals, um, and communicating those. So, example, I'm on the leadership team of the national organization of the Tuskegee Airmen. In that environment, the president and vice president set out goals for the organization that year in terms of revenue, the convention, all this other stuff. So it's the same kind of principle. Set a goal, communicate that goal so that everybody in the lower levels knows what their part of it is. There's a scripture that says, write the vision and make it plain upon tables that he may run that reads it. So as a leader, I'm trying to make the vision so clear to all the lower levels. They don't have to keep coming back and forth to me to try to figure out what should I do next, because they know how their piece fits into the larger
The
goal
larger
or
goal.
vision. So if we're using the inspection example, I know what's going to be inspected in my little part of the world on this ship or on this base. So my part of this whole goal is make sure that my part passes. That when the
Mhm.
inspectors come here and they go through the regs or they look at my equipment, that it passes. Well, how does that get communicated? That's a function of leadership. Making sure that everything's in place so that they can do their job. So that part of it translates very well. Some people think because you're in the military that you only communicate orders. And there are some people that's their style.
Mhm.
But it doesn't have to be that way. And meaning that you in military and in civilian sector, if you can show people what's in it for them.
Mhm.
Meaning, like, if we get an excellent on this inspection, that's going to go in all of your performance reports.
Mhm.
Maybe you might even get some lower level medal out of this when it's all said and done, because if we get this great, excellent or outstanding rating, that's going to go in your enlisted performance report, or it might go into your achievement medal, commendation medal, whatever. So how do you show people what's in it for them? Sometimes in the military, we say, just do it because I told you, which is valid sometimes, but the same thing happens in the civilian sector. But I find out people do better when we show them what's in it for them. Maybe in civilian sector, you might have some other things like a raise or a bonus to incentivize people. Hey guys, we got to do some overtime, but I'll make it up to you with comp time later. So I think those transfer. I don't think that leadership and goal setting are that much different, in and out of the I know, like, in this nonprofit I was at, that I'm not going to name, they had a target for so many. I guess that would give it away. They had targets, and they would communicate those to us, and they had measures. Only bad thing about it was they weren't really listening to anybody as to how to get it done or
Right.
how to create it. But that could be the same thing in the military. The boss comes in, like you said, don't know nothing. And, because I was taught as a cadet, go find an NCO, go find an
Really?
NCO, go find a chief and
Hmm.
ask him. Don't come in thinking that you
Hmm.
know everything, Lieutenant.
Right.
And fortunately, my father-in-law was retired E9. And he told me how he let some officers fall on their face. They figured they'd have to come and ask him anything. So he didn't tell them anything and let them
Hmm.
fall on their face. So I learned, if you have a goal, you have to talk to the people that are doing that thing and ask them, is this the right goal? And how should we go about it? And you get their input. And some people, the fact that you're asking them empowers them and psychs them up and gets them energized. Hey, the CO, as you would call it, asked me my opinion and
Hmm.
took that into account. That same kind of thing works whether you're in the military or in the civilian sector. But a lot of times the civilian, well, a lot of times people don't get that training, and they just figure, I'm the boss. I know everything. I'm the one with the degree. I'm the one that's got the titles. I make the decisions. I make the goals, and it's right because I'm smarter than you, because I make more money than you, because I have more stripes than you, or more, stuff on my shoulder than you, which is a mistake.
Hmm. Well, when you're talking about that transformation, I'm going to tell you, my thing is when I think of that, as I ask that question, I think more so about the structure
Ah,
because from going into the military and coming out of the military, and it's not that I needed the structure, but the structure helped me. And the thing is when I see, as you mentioned, when you've got this clear plan and you just gotta put it together as the execution, then that's what you should be doing. What I found is that when I got out the military, transitioning back into civilian world, it's like, excuse my French, but this as being in the military is like, what the hell is this? It's like all over the place. And the thing is, as you say, somebody saying, do this because I told you to, because I said so, whatever have you. When I first heard that, this is my honest opinion. I'm like, get the hell out of here. I'm not doing that because that is wrong. But I mean, there is just no structure. And see, that is the thing that kind of like I said, no, I can't do this. I can't be working for people or working a job where you got some people that don't know what the hell's going on, but but when something goes totally wrong because they didn't know, they already found the fall guy, so they just throw it on that person. You didn't do your job, and these people looking like, well, how was that my job? But I don't know. I just think that it's the structure for me because when I just think about that, there's like a lot of even these Fortune 500 companies. There's not really structure there. The structure is what the structure base is what the company was built on, and so pretty much you just got to fit inside that culture if you can, if you
yeah.
can.
I would say it probably varies from company to company because there's some places where, like this nonprofit, I knew the hierarchy and how decisions were made, but the people that were in the decision making positions weren't open to suggestions. And so I knew the structure because they have an org chart. Most, even in civilian sector, you have an org chart. Even in some
Yep.
churches, I was in a church that had this complicated org chart for like 40 people. I'm like, this is a 40-person church. We got this complicated org structure and with no names on it. I'm like, who puts out an org chart with no names on it? Why is it a secret? So I've seen structure that, yeah. And so I think it depends on the organization, and the leader. Um, and because you can have, even if you had a bad structure, but you had a good leader, on paper
Mhm.
the structure might be looking like this, but if you got a person that's approachable, that if you could
Right.
catch them in the hallway and say, hey, I'm experiencing this, and they go and make it happen, this, it might not have followed the structure, but if you got to the leader, they can fix it. So I would
Right.
say it varies by organization. Like my mom worked for a Fortune 500 company, that was modeled after the military. And the more she talked about it, she worked for them for over 40 years, and she described things, the nepotism and all these other, hierarchies and stuff, because it was modeled after the military. So I think it would just depend on which organization we're talking about. We're talking about some local organization. Like, I've worked for schools, I've worked for nonprofits, I've worked for universities, I worked for a headhunter firm. After I got out, or the first time I got out, I've worked for flat organizations, hierarchical organizations. I think the people in those chairs really determine, at the end of the day, what happens. Like, even you, the leadership you showed in the Navy to go to your CO. I don't know what rank you were, but it was a huge risk to say, "Hey, this is the problem. I've done my homework," and to go
Yes,
and do this.
yes, you're
That's
absolutely
just
right.
leadership. And so, regardless of the structure, if you have a good leaders in place, you can get around some of the shortfalls of the structure. Like in this nonprofit one, they tried to change all these things, and then they tried to make me sign it and say I was going to do it. And I told the
Mhm.
lady no. My boss told her no. She looked at me like she never had anybody tell her no. And I was like, "No, I'm not doing that." And she was shocked. And she was like, I was like, "No, I'm not signing that." She would just sign it. I'm like, and then, because I'm retired, I'm like, "What's the worst thing you do to me?" I can be
Mhm.
fired. I got to retire. I'll find another job. Where some of these other people who weren't
Mhm.
vested, they could do that. So when her boss came in, when she was replaced, the new boss comes in. He had already heard about me. "I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear your opinions. I want to hear you. You're going to basically do what I say." You know, because he
Right.
heard
Oh,
what I did
wow.
before. He had heard from her that, hey, he didn't sign this. He didn't take these new, there's some new goofy metrics that didn't make any sense. And I was like, "I'm not signing that. I'm not signing it and have you grade me on it. You gonna grade me on this and you want me to sign it and I don't agree with it? No." And so he came in, he was like, "I'm not having discussions with you." And eventually I had to vote with my feet and leave that organization because what he was doing was so wrong to the
Mhm.
people. And then he cut our manning without asking. He just came in.
Yeah.
I think we're inefficient. I'm just gonna cut our manning. You two gonna do all the work that these four people used to do. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
man.
Yeah.
Mm.
Then I finally just said, "Okay, you know what? I'm not gonna give you no notice.
Mhm.
You think we could do all this by ourselves? Then you do it. I'm out of here." And left. Left the organization because he wasn't listening. He was in transmit mode. I know you're in a lower position than me, then therefore I must be smarter than you. Even though you've been
Exactly.
doing this job I've never been in this work center. I don't know the people, but because
Mhm.
I'm the boss, I automatically know what's right. Okay, okay, we'll figure out how you handle that by yourself because you're not gonna stress me out. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. What role does emotional intelligence play in effective leadership based on your experiences?
like I was saying, if you can get to know what's going on with people, like I remember I had a troop. Um, he came up for deployment, and it was like his second time in less than a year. And he said, "I'm not going." And I went, "What do you mean you're not going? What do you mean, Willis?" And then I was able to realize, oh, he's talking about something more serious. I mean, like I am so serious about not going. I'm thinking about doing something drastic. Then it turned
Uh-oh.
into, "Are you thinking about hurting yourself?" And
Mm.
it was yes. Sometimes it's realizing that even though we have different things on our shoulders or different titles on our desks, we're all people. We all have families or things we're concerned about outside the job. And if I know, because I think in leadership books we call it being a people person versus a task oriented person. And
Mhm.
I'm more of a people person. I need to sometimes think about the task because I'll put this emotional intelligence sometimes maybe up too high and not and forget sometimes. Sometimes you just gotta suck it up and just do it just because it's hard, it sucks, but we just got to do it.
Mhm.
But there is room to realize that so and so's having a baby or so and so's going through a divorce and I had some good leaders with that. I had a guy. I'm sitting in one of my favorite bosses. Him and this one E5, they were hunting buddies, and they used to go off and hunt together. And this guy was formerly one of the Air Force's 12 outstanding airmen, which is a huge. big deal, that to be an
Mhm.
outstanding airman, very few people could ever say they were doing that. But this guy was going through a divorce, and in a fit of rage, he shot off a firearm in the sky on base and then went into the police blotter. And I watched this commander tell his hunting buddy, you know, I'm gonna give you Article 15. I was
Oh.
like, man, I understand what you're going through, but you broke the law. And the wing commander saw it, on the blotter, and I got to do this thing. And so I learned that I can know what's going on with you, and that'll factor into what I got to do. And then, like I said, I saw another guy, the guy who replaced him, where it was just where he didn't really care about what people were going through emotionally. This one guy, sharp troop, got into an argument with his girlfriend, punched his hand through a window, went to the hospital. And so the commander called him in. He didn't know the commander had seen that he had punched it through in the blotter, and he lied to him. And the commander like downgraded his rating, ended up getting out of the Air Force. We lost a troop over that. And
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, granted the guy lied, but I think you got to kind of figure out these are people doing these jobs, and whatever's going on at home does affect what they're doing at work. How do I factor that in, and to what degree? The mission can't fail, but I can know that, maybe you're a single parent. Well, in the military, we have to have like a whole plan. If you're a single parent, you have to talk about how would I be able to deploy and all this other stuff. Or person going through a divorce, person is maybe got a, trying to get a son where their spouse is. You do need to know about that stuff,
Mhm.
to make, because one, when you care about that stuff, and what's the saying? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Right.
When you can come across, you can't fake sincerity. You can't fake being genuine. People know if you really care about them, and if you can put in the time to learn who they are as a person, and care about that, then when you ask for the hard thing, people will bend over backwards for that. Or when they don't agree with you, it won't be as tense. Because sometimes I care about you, I know your situation, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna make the call. And I'm gonna stand up in front of my boss and say why I made the call. So I appreciate your opinion, your
Mhm.
expertise, but I'm gonna make the decision. And
Mhm.
people will respect that more if you've shown them respect all along.
Mhm.
Respect for, you're this is your MOS, this is what you do. I trust you. I asked you for the information. There may be some other factors in there, but I'm
Mhm.
showing you that respect as a man, as a woman, not just what's on my shoulder, or I went to the Air Force Academy and blah 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 blah. So I think that showing people how much you care, whether you're in uniform or your civilian sector, that goes a long way. And I've seen so many people that have failed at that. They just figure my title, all I need to tell you is that I'm the boss. Okay, so
Mhm.
then you go get the minimum effort and commitment from me. What's in my job description? You're not gonna get anything extra. I'm not gonna go out of my way to do anything for you above that, because you're not showing me very much respect. You don't care about me. I'm forced to do it because I need this check. But
Mhm.
when you show that you care about people, people will go over and above and beyond what's just in that job description, because you've invested and you've shown that you care about them beyond what's in their job description.
Mhm. So you told us earlier that you had mentors when you were in the military. Can you tell us which of your mentors while you were in the military significantly impacted your leadership style and how?
Ooh, that's a good question, because I also told you I was the most unmentorable person. Um, Good question. Um, wow. And so I have people that were people that I went to show them my records and things like that, or ask different questions. But I think this particular boss that I mentioned that gave this guy Article 15 for shooting the weapon off, he was one of my un he wasn't named my mentor, and he was my boss, and he wasn't African American, but just the way he cared about people, because
Mhm.
I had a boss that came in right after that that didn't care about people.
Mhm.
And so his the way he treated people and the way he dealt with the hard stuff, like how do you look somebody in the eye that you go hunting with like in secret. We buddies off base, but
Mhm.
got to give you this Article 15 that's gonna mess up your career. I think I learned more from his leadership style than maybe anyone else. Um, when I was in uniform, in terms of caring about people and wanting to do the hard things. Like we had a black E5 that worked for me. She was my admin person, and
Mhm.
she was okay. She wasn't the greatest thing since sliced bread. But one of
Mhm.
my E7s came to me. He said, "Sir, you realize she don't do nothing for us." I said, "What?" I said, does everything for me, Coach. Yeah, she does stuff for you, but she don't do nothing for us." I was like, wow. I said, okay. So I rated her accordingly. She went firewall, just a little under that. Well, she goes across the street and she's working for a 2-star. And she
Mhm.
tells her 2-star that her last unit, that's the reason she didn't make E6. So the 2-star calls my major boss. I want to have a conversation with you. I'm coming over. A
Oh.
2-star. Because we had a numbered Air Force headquarters on our base. The 2-star is going to come over and talk to my major. And I said, you want me to be in the room? I'm the one that signed off on the EPR, the listed perform. And he said, no, I'll take care of it. And I was like, wow, here he is. He's going to take shots to the face from a 2-star, for
Mm.
something that I did. And I just learned, about a lot of things about leadership from him. Um, the other gentleman that I mentioned, the guy that retires a 4-star, his example, I think I learned more from him by reading his book and just watching how he engaged with things, kind of later in life. And I just did a Tuskegee Airman Convention where I invited him to speak. And so he would be number 2 and just determined in that he was so, I want to say regal. You think of 4-star, no, he's just like a gentleman and soft spoken but definitely a leader, easily approachable when he was a colonel, when he was a 1-star, when he was a 4-star, he's just approachable and so he would probably be number 2, even though, like I said, some of his lessons I really didn't appreciate until later. And then I told you I had to go back and look at myself and go, why didn't I get more from him before? And I went, because he's a black man. And I didn't realize as a black man, I had my own barriers to receiving from black men. And I could have gotten so much more out of him because I was having it happen to me. Why aren't these black men receiving me as a mentor? And I realized maybe it's for some of the same reasons I didn't receive, because there's so much culturally that pulls down black men and says black men are less than, black men are less qualified, blah, blah, blah. We getting it. It's in the environment. It's in the radio waves. It's in the food. I'm ingesting it too and didn't realize it till I was in my 40s, 50s or whatever. And I'm going, whoa,
It's a
you know,
cycle.
and that just like I remember, they talked about my daughter is 42. My oldest daughter is 42. When they first came out with the baby dolls that are different colors, you
Right.
know,
In
the
South
lighter
Carolina
skin,
experiment.
the lighter skinned baby doll, they preferred that. And I went, wow, it's in the culture that lighter is better than dark. And, and I didn't notice it till I saw it in her, but I didn't notice it in myself until much later, and then I said, wow, I got to deal with that. Hopefully I'm going to write more about that as well. I mean, I'm sharing it with you, but it's also something I want to write about because I think if we can realize that, you know, that it will help people behind us. Hey, there's some people out there that can be a resource to you, but maybe you have this same kind of unconscious bias against Black leaders that some of them have, and you
Right.
don't realize it. And
Mhm.
then we have this phenomenon. I don't know if crabs in the barrel. Sometimes Black people, I would say we had a president, a nominee for president that was African American, eventually became the first president. But when he first got nominated, some people said it wasn't his turn. He wasn't Black enough. We know how we can be with each
Mm.
other. But just for me, like I said, those role models, that last role model I mentioned, I realized I didn't get as much out of him because I didn't equate him on the same level as other officers who were white who were the same rank.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize it until I was reading his book and realizing, man, this dude ended up becoming a 4-star, Vice Chief Staff of the Air Force. I could have been, and I had a relationship with him all those years in my entire career, and I wasn't listening to him as much as I should have because he was Black.
Mm. So, how do you foster teamwork and collaboration among diverse groups, both in the military and your civilian roles?
I think the first thing is having a clear vision. It's the leader's responsibility to communicate the vision. Colin Powell, in one of his books, he wrote about implicit vision, meaning we might have something on a slogan on the wall, but the real thing the boss is concerned about is this. This is what's in the
Yes.
inbox. This is what he has meetings about. This one get you fired.
Yes.
So in terms of teamwork, if everybody knows the goal, that's the first part. The
Mhm.
leadership has to set the target. We know, like, I'll take an organization that doesn't exist anymore, like Sears.
Mhm.
When Walmart started coming on the scene, they missed the target, and everybody in
Mhm.
the Sears organization suffered
Mhm.
because Sears went away.
Yes.
So the bosses didn't have the right target. Everybody below them suffered. So first thing, I set the target, and then as a boss, I need to make sure that I have the right people in the right place. It's my job to make sure I got the right people in the right place. Sometimes that means, like you said, moving the leader out of place. When you realize this guy's causing problem for the whole organization, I got to move him. That's my job as the leader. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's all these little steps, mother may I steps that people have to go through to get their job done. If I find
Mhm.
out that I'm part of that's slowing people down, I need to break down those barriers so that allow people to get their job. I need to have ways for information to flow up because we talk bad about middle managers for a reason, but I need to have something set up where the lowest levels can get to me, whether that's walking around. I'm just walking around. I talk to people, hey, how's it going? What do you need? How can I help you? I'm the person that says yes to everything, and the
Mhm.
middle managers don't know everything. I need to get down to the lowest level sometimes, in the organization, whether civilian or military, and ask people that are doing the jobs every day, what do you need to get
Mhm.
this goal accomplished that I said that we're supposed to accomplish, and empower
Exactly.
them, and then motivating people, showing them kindness, rewarding them, realizing that everybody is not going to be as invested in you as it is you are. You got a lot of other reasons as the boss to be invested. You make more money, then you're going to get all the shine. But what's in it for the person at the lowest level? What can I do to make it rewarding for them, to make
Mhm.
them interested in accomplishment? I've worked at McDonald's twice as an adult. These little high school kids, man, they don't care about McDonald's. It's the prom, it's whatever they calling out. They call out, like, and the turnover is high. What can I do to incentivize these people to make them, interested in how we run the restaurant? That's a leadership challenge. And I saw one manager handle it one way. He just called and fussed everybody out. And I went, okay. Because I'm one of the employees. I'm like, what? You ain't gonna talk to me like that. I'm not a high school kid. I'll quit this little part-time job in a minute. But I watched how this one guy handled it. I'm going, man, I wouldn't have done it that way. How do I know who the best high schoolers are? Maybe I keep them, and I don't know. But that whole thing, that's all the responsibility of management. You set the goals, make sure the people are in the right place, be kind to them, care about them, have their information get up to you as to how they think they can best do it, and make everybody feel a part of the team, and then make sure there's no implied favoritism, and then I talked to you about that other piece before, recognizing, even though I'm treating everybody the same and treating everybody like a team, if there is some discrimination going on, gender, race, I guess we have new categories now, even with um, sexual orientation, whatever, to deal with that too,
Mhm.
so that everybody feels like they're being treated the same based on what they contribute to the mission, not maybe, because of their skin color, their gender, or what they do
Mhm.
in their bedroom. That's a whole newer thing. But yeah, the leader's got all that on his plate. That's all his
Mhm.
responsibility, not just to come in and sit up in the desk, send out email.
You got those that's still doing that.
I know it's my job to find them. It's my job to find them and get rid of them.
Yeah,
You know,
they're
to
still doing that.
Yeah, so I mean, the good leader should go around and find those people, and like you did, get them moved out. You're slowing everybody down. I can give you a
Mhm.
warning. Like one dude, he had come in. He was a master sergeant. He was E7, and he came from Australia, and he was an
Oh.
NCOIC, a non-commissioned officer in charge. But he was in a little small unit in Australia that might have like 3 people in it. He comes into an organization that's got 40 people in it, but because of his rank, he had to be in charge. He was slowing
Mhm.
everybody down because he had never dealt with anything that big. And my lower level folks were frustrated. So what I did was I made him my special assistant, pulled him out of the chain of command. You work special projects. for me and made this tech sergeant who was a hard charger in charge so he could go and run, and the master sergeant was a little offended because now his job title is going to be less. He's not superintendent of this large work center. He's special project officer or whatever to me, a
Mm.
direct report. But that's, mine to deal with. I got to deal with his hurt feelings and disappointment, but my larger allegiance and loyalty is to the whole organization. You
Right.
can't handle all this, bro. You came from a little bitty unit. We was flying and smoking before you got here. You came in and the brakes went on because now everybody's trying to get things to you. You don't process things that fast because you're not used to working with this larger organization. I got to move you out the way for the betterment of the entire organization.
Mm.
Um, whether you like it or not.
So, in your opinion, what are the most critical qualities of a successful leader?
The ability to read the room, meaning set the right goals. I use the example of Sears, not being able to look at the changes in their environment and shift their organization so they could be viable in the future. So I got to be able to set the right goals based on whatever we're facing, whether it's competitors in the civilian section or like in a nonprofit thing, it might be fundraising and meeting our donation goals or whatever, whatever the goal is, the first thing I would think is the leaders got to be able to set the right vision, the right goals. The next would be, like I said before, getting the right people in place, whether that means bringing on new people, developing the people we have and mentoring them, or moving people out of the way. Um, Creating a culture. I didn't use that word before, but there's this culture of caring, letting people know that they're cared about, that their input matters. Part of the culture should be flow of information and ideas up, that's rewarded, and not um, discouraged. Because sometimes the bright ideas from lower levels threaten middle management. Oh, you coming for my job? You trying to? And how do I make middle managers feel okay to let that information come up? And let everybody feel like they're a part of the team when middle managers are thinking, you giving all this shine to people below me. How do I set that culture and rewards people knowing that, not only am I and make that fair. So the culture, the goals, the vision, this caring culture, and setting the right goals. Like I said, I can have a caring culture, put people in the right place, but if we got the wrong goals, because we see that all the time in industry, we're leaders somehow, the factory closed because y'all picked the wrong targets. Y'all didn't take stuff, and you walked away with a parachute and a severance pay, and these people got laid off because you picked the wrong goals, or you didn't read the environment the right way and set the target so that we could be competitive. And then as a result, these folks all got laid off. That's a failure of leadership corporately. In the military, people change jobs, commanders change jobs every 12 to 15 months,
Yep.
and so sometimes they're not as accountable, but I won't go that far because when they fail, it's in the Air Force Times on the front page, commander fired, it failed
Mhm.
inspection, so there's a little bit more accountability in the military if you fail, or commander had an improper relationship with an enlisted person, front page news, court martial, maybe there's
No
more
sweat
accountability
days.
in the military, but I think those cover what I think, a leader, um, the qualities a leader should have, in an organization, whether it's military or civilian.
And we're going to do this final question here on leadership. And we're going to actually have, we're going to need to have you come back to finish this because, I mean, this was truly wonderful. But the last question on leadership: how do you ensure that your leadership approach remains relevant in today's rapidly changing environment?
I think it's homework, meaning a lot of times, like in the military, they make you at different stages in your career as an officer go back to school. And you have to read these leadership principles, I have to study Eisenhower, I have to study all these different folks. But we have, I can't think of who the great management theorists are of today, but reading books, reading articles. I like to read magazines like Fast Company.
Mhm.
Um, and Fast Company is a good one. I can't think of another one. but reading books on leadership and trying to stay sharp on, like, years ago, it was Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective, you know, people, whatever. And I read that. I went to the training. So I think, he called it sharpening the saw. Reading books
Mhm.
on leadership, reading examples, case studies of how other people lead. Um, Even, there's examples like I'll use like Steve Kerr, for example, for the Warriors, or even there's examples in sports and stuff, how people are facing challenges as leaders and how they handle it. I'm a Cowboy fan, so bad example, Jerry Jones, I'm probably gonna get my cowboy card taken from me, Jerry of seasons. But yeah, I mean, so studying other leaders, even in every setting, in church, I watch how leaders handle things. So I would say always being a um, always being a learner, being a continuous learning. I guess that's the term. Realizing that you can always learn, and you need to continue to examine yourself, and then being open to feedback, because sometimes we do get set in our ways. And I've always my direct reports. I
Mhm.
always try to make it safe for them to give me feedback. There's certain things I know I'm not good at. Peter Drucker is one of the books I like reading his stuff. He talked about staffing to your weaknesses. I know I'm a big visionary person. I'm not really a great detail person. So I
Mhm.
staff that. I find a detail person to, handle my details and look at that, and then have them kind of, pull me in. Like, I hate meetings. I hate meetings. I hate wasting time in meetings. I had one of my folks come and say, "Sir, we need to have some meetings because we need to talk to you." Because I was so concerned about having meetings that wasted their time that I was canceling all the meetings. Go, "No, sir, we need to have some meetings sometimes to talk to you." Tell you what's going on. So being open to feedback, where someone can tell me if they think I'm wrong,
Mhm.
and what I'm doing as a leader. I might not agree, but I need to make it safe for you to come in and tell me that what you think I'm doing is wrong, or how I'm handling a particular thing. And then even benchmarking, looking at one time I was in a place, I was in a new career field, and I really wasn't sure if what I was doing was right. So I just went. I was at a 4-star base. I called up the other people, my counterparts at the other 4-star bases, and say, "How are you doing this?" And found out how they were doing it. So benchmarking, being open to feedback from your subordinates, and then continuous learning, reading books, um, watching other leaders that you admire. Like, I like Steve Kerr. Um, it could be I like the guy for the Texans. I can't think of it, as a black coach of the Texans. That's really cool. And
Mhm.
watching his, how he is with people. The guy for Detroit Lions, he's and just how he motivates. How can I learn? How can I bring some of that might fit my style? Or maybe it might be my style as a hat I put on as an actor. Okay, I'm not really a task oriented person, but maybe I need to be a little bit more task focused for this particular leadership situation. Paul, in the Bible, Paul says, "I've become all things to all men that I might win some." In this particular job, I may not be able to just be my normal personality. I may need to come in, especially if it's like an organization that's broken, they've had failure. I might need to be tough and strict for a little while to kind of get things back up, and then kind of ease back. But initially I might come in and just break everything up, fire some people, put some stuff in order, have some inspections, kind of come in there, be this person that's not really me, and
Mhm.
then later ease out of it. So hopefully that answered your question.
Well, no, actually, because you did, and so just the thing about that, because like we're now in this everyday evolution, just in our climate, where everything is changing every day, and the main focus for this time right now in the 21st century is IT and AI. That thing is updating every minute, every second, every hour, every day, every week, every month, continuously updating, which means that if management, leadership, whatever you want to call it, that's in place to make decisions, it's not up on that at least every day. When you talk about these case studies that you mentioned and so forth, if they're not up on it, how in the hell are they going to actually lead somebody? Because these younger kids are so tech savvy that if you're not speaking the language, you're in the wrong place. I'm talking about management.
Yeah.
You're in the wrong place, because if you're not speaking that language where you got all this talent that's absorbing like sponges to help to expand an organization, they need that today's person that's adaptable, flexible, and able to adjust on the fly.
Right.
And so, that's why now you're seeing a lot of these younger leaders or younger CEOs that are actually hiring these folk from Gen X and Z.
Yeah.
I mean, Y and Z. I'm sorry, forgive me. And so they're hiring those people because those people are pretty much like up on that. There are a lot of us that's in X, I'm talking about yourself and I, that's like learned to do those things. But that's where we have to adapt to these folk, where
Yeah.
we are the ones now that's got to go back to school to get up on that wheel, because that wheel is turning.
Right.
And if we're not able to get on that wheel, despite the knowledge of what we have as in great leaders, that real critical thinking of how to actually execute plans, how to make plans, and how to make them happen. Yeah, we can do those things from a different perspective, but now everything is technical because you got to operate inside that space.
Yeah.
And if we're
Or at
not
least
able to
know
operate
how
inside
it
that space, it's not going to happen.
right. At least know how it can impact you. But that's kind of like what I was saying before. If you're open to all levels of the organization and feedback, then and let that impact your leadership and let that impact your planning and how you run things, then you'll be okay. Because I can't. Even like when I was a lieutenant, I remember they was like, "LT, don't touch the equipment. Don't touch the equipment." And so I have to ask them questions like, "Okay, well, what does what does this do? How do you keep it on schedule? How do you minimize downtime? If
Exactly.
this radio talks to the planes, how do you make sure that it's always working?
Hmm.
And or whatever piece of equipment. I don't have to touch it. But I learned the regs. I read all their regs. I may
Hmm.
not know how you fix it, but I know now what your maintenance schedule is, what the
Hmm.
reg says you're supposed to be doing with it. So I can come check that and say, okay, I may not know how the electrons work, but I know you're supposed to sign off on these inspections ever so much. Let me see. The reg says you're supposed to do it every 6 weeks. Let me see that you've been doing it. Let's go up
Hmm.
on top of that mountain and look
Hmm.
at the equipment and see if you've been inspecting it. Let me see the outage rates and how you're trying to get the outage rates down, because on a larger level, we're supposed to be providing service to the customer or in support of the mission. How are you doing that? And what do you need from me to be able to do it better? Like in your case, well, sir, we need to go some classes on AI. Oh, okay. I need to put that in the budget. Like
Hmm.
when internet first came, I was at a base where we were installing fiber and we're just putting up the internet. And
Hmm.
so nobody had training on that. So I had to put dollars and invest in to get my people trained so that they could stand up a base-wide local area network and know how to fix it when it went down. Because once it got working, the last thing we want to tell the wing commander is that it's down. You know, he got used to using it. We want to say it's down, or the phone in his Batmobile wasn't working. So you tell me what you need so that you can keep all the systems up. I don't need to know how the electrons and all the technical stuff that you learned to do that. I just need to know what resources do you need to keep it up. What training do you need? And then we're good.
Yes,
That's my job, to provide you the resources so you can do your job. You know.
exactly. So, in closing for tonight, what is it that you'd like for our audience to know, in particular, as we just discussed leadership? And also, if you want to leave your contact information, how they can contact you, your websites, whatever that's necessary. What are some of the things you want to leave with our audience tonight?
Wow. Anything that's said on diversity, you can find like my Air Force diversity books on Amazon.com. The Air Force's Black Ceiling, the Air Force's Black Pilot Training Experience, the Air Force's Black Pilot State of the Union. I talk about a lot of the diversity issues in there. If you go to Amazon.com, you'll see that most of the books I write are Christian books. That's a great influence on my leadership style. I shouldn't say that like I'm apologizing for it, because I'm not. And so all those books are on Amazon and Audible. Um, wow. Hopefully, I've said something that people can go back. I also have a book called The 25 Essential Bible Verses for Christian Business Leaders. So a lot of these things that I'm talking about are in that book, and it's a journal style book, meaning it asks you questions like you're asking me as a
Mhm.
leader, and then you can go in and journal things about delegation, things about caring about people. A lot of those kind of things I put in that book. It's my best-selling book and audio book. And I recommend that for any leader to go back, and make yourself better, because you asked, that question, and it's like continuously learning. That I might be at one level, which might be okay if I'm supervising 10 people. But what if I'm supervising 50 or 100? I should be growing, continuously learning as a leader. I think that particular book would be a good book, and you can get that on Amazon. It's 25 Essential Bible Verses for Christian Business Leaders. You don't have to be a Christian to benefit from it, but it does talk about like delegation, being a leader that cares, all the kind of things that we've been talking about. And then even if you don't get the book, hopefully something in this conversation, this almost 2 hours, you can go back and challenge yourself as a leader and say, how am I setting vision, putting people in place, creating culture, holding people accountable, being genuine, caring, and conveying that genuine sincerity to the people that work for me. Or even like in your story, even if I'm not the leader, how can I impact change when something bad is happening and the leader's not doing anything about it? How
Mhm.
do I use my leadership with what I can control? You created a survey and brought people together in your own leadership at a level far below the CO, but still impacted the change.
Mhm.
So I think that was valuable too. You don't have to have the title boss, deputy. You might just be the worker that saw it and you decide, I really want to change this. And then maybe what can I do? Short of leaving. Sometimes it is appropriate to leave, but is there anything I can do as a leader at my level to impact change?
Well, there you all, ladies and gentlemen. You just heard Mr. Ivan Thompson give us a whole school of knowledge on what it is to know about leadership and what leaders should be. That structure and that discipline is what we all need if we're going to succeed today here in the 21st century. No matter what color you are, no matter what your gender is, you are going to have to understand leadership if you're in that position. Of those that are trying to be young entrepreneurs, think about this leadership that was just course that was just taught to you tonight. Please make sure you go to Amazon.com and check out Ivan's books and get those books, especially the ones on Audible, because I'm sure that once you go through those books and you learn, especially the things he just mentioned tonight, that is going to give you a lot of knowledge and help you out a whole lot in making that decision to take that next step. For those of you that were looking at the show tonight on our YouTube channel, please, if you would, subscribe, hit the notifications button, and where you'll be able to not only watch the shows as they happen live, but you'll also be able to go back and watch all of the shows, including the show tonight, if you are not looking at this moment. I want to thank you, Ivan, again for being here. We definitely want to have you back so we can have that part two, because you definitely just gave us a lot of nuggets that we needed. And, I think when we talk about leadership, you're an exemplary guy to talk about that because you have definitely put that time in and you are an example of great leadership. So for those of you that are watching tonight, please make sure you watch us tomorrow, as we will be back on again live tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Y'all have a great evening, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you
Thank you.
again, sir. And I
Thank you
will
for